it's Lisa Dickey from Dickey's Cooking School, and today we're going to make pastry. Thanksgiving's coming, perfect time to get your pastry ready for apple pie or pumpkin pie or any other type of pie. Pastry is actually very straightforward, despite the fact that people are quite concerned about it. It's not hard, and I'm going to show you how. So, basic rules. Your pastry is equal parts fat and grain. Your fat has to be cold, preferably frozen, but if not frozen, straight from the fridge. To make equal parts, the best way to make equal parts or equal measurements of fat and grain is to use a scale. You don't have to use a scale, but that's the most accurate way. If you don't use a scale, you're going to hand measure it. I'm going to say you're looking for about, in this case, this is 2 cups of fat. So you're going to want 2 cups of flour. When you measure your flour, if you're not using a scale, you're going to scoop it up, plop it in, and even it out. That's the best way to do it. It's not a great idea to jam your cup into a big flour bag because you're actually packing your flour in and you're getting more than you actually need. Okay, the other thing for pastry, we need ice cold water. You gotta have vinegar. In this case, we're using cider vinegar. It doesn't have to be cider vinegar. You could use just regular old white vinegar is fine. Okay, we're gonna use a little bit of salt, and today we're gonna add a teeny bit of super dense Greek yogurt just to give it a slightly tangy flavor because I like that with my apple pie. Okay, so we're gonna use the same technique that we use to do biscuits. So we've got our fat. We're going to toss it in a little butter just to make it less greasy on our hands, okay? And this is what we're gonna do. We're gonna take our flour, put it in the bottom. We're gonna take our grater and we're gonna grate a little bit of fat. We're gonna add a little bit more flour and then grate some more fat. The fat that we're using today, we're using equal parts butter and lard. Lard is beef fat. You could also use shortening, although I find it kind of weird and it never rots and it also doesn't ever seem to get very hard. And it also is related to destroying orangutan habitat. However, having said that, if you wanted to try it with the vegan butter, I would give it a whirl with that. I haven't done it. Or you can just do a straight butter pastry, which is always good. If you want to go down the road, you want to try to make a sweet pastry, that could combine flour and it could combine a little bit of sugar in the flour. And I've actually, when I've made pastry for pecan pie, I've actually used a rasp and grated up some really nice fine lemon zest for it. Okay, so I'm just going to continue on this way until all my fat is grated into the flour. Okay, we're back. So all of the pastry has been grated. I'm going to move that out of the way. And now I'm going to add my 1 teaspoon of vinegar. I've already added a teaspoon of salt. And then here is my tablespoon of Greek yogurt. You could also use sour cream. You could use mascarpone. You don't have to use this. I just like the flavor that it gives. Okay, so we're going to slightly toss it and just sort of combine it. And now I'm going to pour it out onto a floured surface. Okay, so here is my dough. So the key to pastry dough, like the key to biscuits, is you're going to keep your contact minimal, you're going to keep your hands freezing cold, and you're not going to overwork the dough. Because you overwork the dough, the butter and the fat is going to melt, and you're going to get tough pastry. And you want the butter to create air pockets so you get beautiful flaky pastry. Okay, so we're going to scoop it up. And I know I'm going to need some water, so I'm going to just put my hands in the ice water. And you're not pouring it out. You always add it bit by bit, because if you over add the water, you're done. You can't go back. Okay? So I'm going to splash a bit of water on top, literally just splashing it on. Oops, got an ice cube there. And then we're going to scoop it up and we're going to push it. And we're just waiting for it to form. Okay? So I'm going to get a little bit more and sprinkle it on top. Get that ice cube out again. And we're going to scoop like that. And we're going to scoop it up and get it to form. And then we're going to add a bit more ice water. This time I caught the ice cube. And that's pretty much ready to go now. So that, I don't need any more liquid. You can feel it coming together. So now we're just gonna give it a couple of more passes. And gather that up. And there is our pastry dough. Okay, here is our beautiful dough. I'm not gonna use it right away, so I'm gonna put it in the fridge actually, and it's not always a good idea to just let your dough, anytime you work it, let it rest for a little bit and then bring it back out on the counter and then let it warm for a few minutes before you roll it out. This is perfect. I'm gonna make a meat pie with this tonight, a beef pie. If you wanted to make them into little tarts, the two things you need to do is definitely, number one, your tart pan or your muffin pan needs to be spotless. Any little piece is gonna have the dough adhere to that, and it's a heartbreak to try to dig out dough. Second, another good thing is to just give it a cooking spray. Either give it a good wipe with vegetable oil or butter, or spray it down with cooking spray. If you don't have cookie cutters, you could use a lid for a big jar, or find something. And the last thing is, when you're rolling it out, you want to roll it out to about 1/4 inch thick if it's in these little pans, otherwise you're going to get a ton of dough. And then the last thing is, when you're rolling it out, the first thing you're going to do is you're going to push it down. In fact, if you want to kind of save yourself some time, you can store it in when you put it in the fridge, you can store it down in a nice flat disc, so it's kind of halfway there for you. Liberally flour your surface when you're rolling it out, because what you don't want to roll it so much out and it's actually adhered on the bottom, and then you're tearing it to lift it up. So I'm going to say at the beginning, you're going to give it a good roll back and forth, nice and steady, and then do a 90-degree turn. So you're going to keep continually moving it and rolling it that way until you get the thickness or the thinness that you want. Take your hand across your dough just to make sure there's not any obvious undulations. You don't want a super chunky bit and then a super skinny bit. And that is it. That's dough. If you want to make it and save it, put it in the freezer. You can put it in the freezer up to 3 months, or if it was my mom, 4 years would do for her. She would keep it forever. Nothing was thrown out, which is probably why I had a lot of food poisoning when I was a kid. Anyway, I wish you all a wonderful Thanksgiving. If you're scared about pastry, don't be. It's fun, versatile, and what's better than pie? I don't know. Bye.